Welcome to Breaking Solo, how solopreneurs break barriers, build brands, and embrace the future of business.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. I'm excited to have Gail Goodman Lynch on the podcast today. Gail, introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Oh, I'm happy to. Donna, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I am a big fan of all of your work and excited to get a chance to talk to you today. My name is Gail Goodman Lynch, and I am a serial entrepreneur and a business life coach. I am very passionate about helping other business owners make more money while achieving greater peace. And I do that as a Business Made Simple certified coach. I help both entrepreneurs, people who are wanting to start a business, and people who are already in business, running a small business, looking to scale and grow, install systems and processes into their businesses that help those businesses get off the ground the right way and scale the right way. I've also, over the last decade or so, it's been 10 or 12 years, I've spent a great deal of time doing a mind, body, spirit exploration of my own, having hit midlife and, there's the crisis, right? So instead of going into a total meltdown, I decided I was going to level myself up, and I use those mind, body, spirit principles in my work to help people, kind of get out of their own way, overcome imposter syndrome, remove those roadblocks that can really stand in the way of the success of their business. Because, and you being the solopreneur lady, right? You are your business, and the health of your business is a direct reflection of the health of you.
That is so true, Gail, so true.
If you're a mess, it's all a mess.
That's right. It goes back and forth too. I can be doing pretty good on my, my personal side, but then if the business is, sucking, then I'm feeling terrible too. So it goes both ways.
Yes, it's definitely a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, did you always know that this was your path, or did you pivot from something else?
I actually pivoted. So I started my business at the very beginning of the Great Recession. It was November 1st of 2008. And that is because I got laid off, or technically fired, from my vice president of marketing job on October 31st. And yeah, and I saw the train wreck of the Great Recession coming. A lot of us did. I had worked in housing pretty much my entire career. So if you didn't see it coming, and were surprised by it, and you worked in housing, you really weren't paying attention. And I realized, I was like, okay, this is the kind of big economic bump that is not going to allow for vice president jobs to be hanging from trees, very easily plucked, right? So I said, all right, well, maybe it's time for me to just hang out a shingle and see how that goes. And so my origin story is really one that is very similar to a lot of entrepreneurs. People lose their jobs and they think, do I really want to go back into trying to slog and get a job, or do I want to see if I take a chance on myself? And being the entrepreneurial evangelist that I am, I will always tell people, I think you should double down on you, invest in you, and just make it happen, especially if you're passionate about something. So, and I was passionate. My background was marketing and communications, so I did the logical thing, right? I went and became a marketing communications consultant. And interestingly enough, in the Great Recession, when no one could hire anyone, but the work still needed to be done, I stayed awfully busy, which was great.
Awesome. Good for you. So what's been the biggest challenge in your solopreneur journey, and how did you overcome it?
I would say one of the hardest things about being a solopreneur is you are a solo act, right? You don't have a board of directors, you don't have coworkers, you don't have a boss except you, and you can very easily become the worst boss that you've ever had. So yeah, I think those are probably the hardest parts, right? Is that somewhat loneliness that you feel in your work. And as I grew in my career and was working with more and more people, in their marketing communications activities, I started to collect, I guess is the best term, other people who worked as solopreneurs. And I formed a peer group several years ago where we all get together once a month. We get out of our houses, we get out of our bunny slippers, if that's your jam, and we all sit in a room together and we work through, kind of our problems as business owners, but we also try to encourage and inspire one another. And that's been going on for quite a long time. And as I started to work with more and more clients, in the marketing communications realm, they joke that you should also have a degree in psychology, because you're always that person people come to tell you things. I mean, there's the TMI quotient is really high, right? I hear all these things from people, what they're struggling with, what they're trying to overcome. And I realized, based on the wisdom of my experience, my own personal explorations and leveling up, in mind, body, spirit, especially, that I wanted to be a coach. And it really started with that peer group that I started of solopreneurs that just kind of wanted to get out of their house and feel like they weren't working by themselves anymore. So there was the big pivot.
That's awesome. I have two marketers here locally, and we meet once a month and, share our sorrows and talk about our successes. And it's very helpful to have other people and we have a group chat that we can, communicate in. So yeah, I like having a team that's not really a team.
Yeah, and sometimes you can share work too. I've found that with some of the solopreneurs that are in our peer group as well, but not everybody does the same thing either. I think the real value of it is that you're coming from the same perspective of being a solopreneur. Like, unless you've done that, it's hard to understand that, right?
Yeah.
If you've worked for a big company, you've always had a team. If you're starting a company, like my husband and I actually own a sign manufacturing company too. So I actually run two businesses. The one, my solopreneurship passion is my own thing, but then he and I together, we have employees, we have cost of goods sold, we have vendors, we have clients. It's a very different thing to run a company like that than to run your own show.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So, and good for you for running two businesses.
Well, I always joke I'm blessed with like all kinds of crazy energy and it's all got to go somewhere. So apparently I just keep starting businesses until I run out of steam.
That's awesome. So, do you have a unique niche that you focus on?
I would say for my coaching practice, I really am passionate about those people who are wanting to leave corporate America and see the bigger picture, right? Like to do the what if. If they're asking themselves that question, those are people I really love to work with because I'm just personally passionate about them. And, kind of like you, the solopreneurs also have a real, soft spot in my heart with my, the one mastermind that I run with that group. But really small business owners, kind of like the folks that are running businesses like my sign company, they're investing personal capital in it. They're hiring people. They're trying to structure a business that's going to be successful. And their exit strategy might be to sell at some point. So then you've got to build something of actual value. When you're a solopreneur, when you leave the business kind of dies, right? Because you're the business. In the sign company, for example, you need to actually build structures and processes that will make that business valuable to someone to come along and write you a big check in 5 or 10 years when you're ready to sell. And those are the people that really light me up because I think that those very small businesses, they all know that, but it's so difficult sometimes to get out of your own way or to get out of all the crazy and chaos of day-to-day business and really focus on that. And that's where coaching is so important. Like I've invested personally in coaching. I think everybody should have a business coach, especially if you're a small and scaling business. And that's going to be the game changer for you because it not only helps you with your leadership mindset, it also helps you build and grow a business that's going to be sustainable because you'll stop getting in the way of it a lot of the time because we have a tendency as humans to get in our own way.
Really?
We trip over stuff and then break things and
It's the stuff between our two ears that gets in the way.
Right. And if we'd listen more to the thing in the center of our chest, we might actually, do it right next time.
Yeah, that's possible.
It's possible.
So, do you see any shifts happening that could change the way solopreneurs work in the future?
I honestly think that more solopreneurs are going to do the kind of thing like you just described with the fellow marketers that are getting together once a month. And a few years ago, I actually switched my marketing business model to more of the agency that wasn't the agency because I was trying to bring together really qualified, senior level people to do marketing projects. Because if you hire an agency, someone like me will sell you on the job and kind of strategize on the front end. But your day to day is usually somebody who's younger, just out of college, perhaps, doesn't know what they don't know. There's often very much a big gap with big agencies because you don't have those sort of that person with a bit more of experience kind of managing the whole account. And I wanted to avoid that by collaborating with other senior level people who do what I do, and then we just sort of share in the wealth, if you will. And I loved that idea. It was a bit before its time when I started it, but I'm doing more of that again now. And I think that is the wave of the future because there's two ways you can be successful in your solopreneur business. You can either build recurring revenue through, like maybe you develop a course and people can take that course over and over again and pay you money. But I think the challenge with just doing just something like that is that you are personally divorced from it and you're not providing personal value to it any longer. And I don't know that it's a sustainable model. I think collaborating with other people is going to be the way the future of work happens, especially for solopreneurs.
Awesome. So, of course, my dogs are starting. Do you have a tool, an app, or a resource that you absolutely can't live without?
I was going to say Zoom, is honestly, I know it sounds like a very trite answer, but think about it. Can we live without Zoom? I mean, think about how much we use it now. And I am always an advocate of getting in person when you can. But in situations where you can't, Zoom is fantastic. And you can get so much more done. And a phone call is good too, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it is much easier to connect personally when you're on Zoom.
Absolutely. Oh, now my dog's barking.
All right, Gail. So tell me, do you have any daily habits or routines that help to keep you focused and productive?
Yes, there is one specific thing that I do that I recommend to everybody that they do throughout the day, regardless of what you do, actually. And that is to breathe, which I know sounds completely insane because it's like, well, I breathe all day long. But how often do you deep breathe? Is the question. And this comes out of more of my, practice in meditation. I do a lot of guided meditation. I do breath work, but I'm not talking about something quite that, grandiose. It's really just a simple matter of stopping and taking 3 really deep breaths. It takes you less than 1 minute to do that. But if you do it as a regular habit throughout the day, especially as you start to feel yourself, you feel that stuff like coming up in your chest and you're feeling very tense and you're tight, that is the thing that will diffuse the bomb. And I have to say, having run a business for 17 years and made so many snap and ill-conceived, responses to things, that has really stopped me from doing knee-jerk things and making bad decisions. Just simply breathing. And I think most solopreneurs that might be listening to this, we've all been in that situation more times than we probably care to count, or we get the email from the client. We're kind of like, we start to panic. Just breathe. And if you could just get in the habit of doing that, it really is life-changing.
Okay, that's great advice. Breathe. All right, so is there one piece of advice that you would give to someone that's starting they're just starting their solopreneur journey?
Yes, I would say that one of the most important things about thinking about starting a business is to really understand your personal why. Because in my case, I wound up in a situation where I didn't have the job, right? And I was faced with, okay, I've still got a mortgage. I've still got a little baby at home I have to feed. All these things, these pressures will come in on you. But if you don't have a really clear internal guided compass pointing you toward your long-term vision for your life, then everything you do is going to be reactive rather than proactive. So what I always suggest to people is really figure out what is your personal aim in life? Like, where do you want to go with your future and work backward from there. Because if you get a very clear picture in your mind of where you want to end up or what you want life to look like, and I'm going to say, when I say end up, it's like, what does life look like? Does it have more freedom? Do you feel more secure? Are you able to travel more? Are you able to spend more time with family? You know, what do you personally value the most? If you can keep all of your values in the forefront of your mind, all the decisions that you make can then be seen through that lens. And that, I promise you, will keep you from making really disastrous decisions. And it keeps propelling you forward, because I think where people lose their way is when they start to think about the business as being the most important thing. And I always tell my clients that I work with, it's like the business serves you, not the other way around. So it can eat you up if you let it. And if you stay true to your values and know what it is you truly want from life, you really won't go astray as easily. It's going to happen from time to time, but overall, you're going to make, very steady progress toward that vision you have for yourself.
Yeah. So Michael Hyatt's life plan
Mm-hmm.
session he does once a year, that really helps me get refocused again on what's important, because life gets in the way and you forget what your purpose is, what your why is. So yes, I agree with that totally.
Yeah, and I do think you make an excellent point, Donna, and that it's not a once and done either. It's like you need to set that before intention before you start, but remind yourself of it frequently, and like an annual exercise in honoring, what's gone before in the past year. So a lot of people do that at the end of the year. I sometimes tend to do that in the spring, which is sort of weird, but I tend to, this time of year is good for me to do that because the holidays are always busy. So I always feel like I get more reoriented like in the first quarter. Yeah, but check in on that once a year and honor what's happened and remind yourself where you're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, do you have any exciting projects or launches that's coming up?
Yeah, I actually have a entrepreneur webinar that I'm doing on April 11th at noon Central Time. So that's available on my website to register. It's free. It's a 1 hour session, and it will basically talk about, if you're thinking of starting a business, the things you really should and could consider when you're doing that. And that's noon Central, April 11th. It's a Friday. And you can get that on my website at coequalnetwork.com.
Awesome. And her website will be in the show notes, ladies and gentlemen. So, where can people connect with you, and learn more about what you do?
Well, definitely coequalnetwork.com is my website, so it's probably the hub of all things. I do also have a podcast called Choice Wisdom, and that is available on all the usual suspects, Apple, Spotify, and Amazon Music, as well as Audible. And then you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn handle is Gail Goodman Lynch.
Awesome.
Thank you. I did too. I really appreciate you having me on, Donna.